You're never really going to get back the good old days. The best parts of that period are long gone, and all we can do is think about them, hoping that one day we can reclaim their beauty. What were some of the best experiences of that time that you can't find now? Join us in this video as we journey through experiences from each decade that are now lost to time. 1950s. Encyclopedia Britannica. If you had a copy of this during school, you were basically the king or queen of the class. The Encyclopedia Britannica was the original marker of status in the 1950s. Getting these books was no small feat. It usually knocked a pretty penny or two out of your pocket. Usually you had no choice but to read those bulky volumes because you had spent so much money getting them. For a small kid back then, you had the whole world at your fingertips. If you could ask any question, you were sure to find the answer in the dense pages of the Britannica. Looking back, how were we able to pull off reading all that stuff? It must certainly be a superpower, wouldn't you say? While you have stuff like mobile phones and basically any internet devices today, you still can't replace the feeling of having an actual book in your hands. Our next entry is a similar experience that is impossible to replace. Soda fountains. Whether it was drugstores or shopping malls, soda fountains were a staple of the fresh ideas that pervaded the 1950s. Is it Coke you like? Sprite? Or some no-name brand which tastes close enough? It didn't matter. The soda fountain always had you covered. It was also a good place to meet friends and share a drink. While it enjoyed its peak in this time, the trend of soda fountains gradually lost wind as drive-in restaurants became more popular. No one wanted to stand around or walk to the drugstore when you could drive to McDonald's and get a burger in the process. Soda fountains may have lost all their value when it went out of style, but our next entry became even more valuable than gold. The 1957 Chevy Bel Air. Not even a Cadillac could beat this. Known simply as the 57 Chevy, this car is an American icon in the flesh. Its distinctive tail fins, chrome accents, and sleek design capture the bold spirit of the 1950s. Powered by a revolutionary small-block V8 engine, it delivered a luxury driving experience with advanced suspension for a smooth ride. Inside, the car boasts plush seating, a spacious cabin, and a well-equipped dashboard, showcasing luxury and craftsmanship. Beyond transportation, the 57 Chevy became a cultural symbol, featured in countless movies and TV shows. Today, it remains celebrated by enthusiasts and collectors, representing a golden age of American car manufacturing and a timeless piece of history. Speaking about machines in a timeless period of history, our next entry was a special member of that group: twin-lens reflex cameras. We didn't always have mobile phones or sleek modern cameras. There was a time you had to put in some sweat to take a picture. This was mostly between the 1920s and 50s, when the twin reflex camera was king. Just about every journalist or photographer had a version of it in their collection. This complex piece of machinery featured a genius design with two lenses on top of each other. It was a collector's item for camera lovers and a common plaything for children, who used hand-me-down cameras to sharpen their photography chops. The twin reflex camera is an ancient relic that shows us where we truly began. Our next entry is a complex process that many of us were happy to do away with, even though we all started there. Doing laundry by hand. In the 1950s, doing laundry by hand was a labor-intensive task. Sorting clothes was essential to prevent colors from bleeding, and stains were pre-treated with soap and elbow grease. After heating water on the stove, soap flakes were added to a large tub. Clothes were then scrubbed on a washboard, a repetitive motion that built strong arms. Rinsing involved a two-step process in clean water to ensure all soap was removed. This meticulous process made clean clothes feel like a well-earned reward. By the time washing machines came, they were a welcome development. Folks all over were fed up with having an entire day take up their cleaning duties. We're really living in the best time in history, aren't we? If there's one thing we can also be glad doesn't exist anymore, it has to be what comes next. Being forced to write cursive on a blackboard. The infamous cold sweat of having to do something while the entire class is watching could have given any kid nightmares. Writing cursive on the blackboard was a regular part of classroom life that we hated. It needed precision and practice we weren't willing or able to deliver. Students watched intently as teachers showed the art of flowing letters and connected strokes. It demanded careful attention to form and spacing, often under the scrutiny of classmates and teachers. Erasing mistakes meant dealing with chalk dust clouds and starting over. Soon doing this began to fade out of fashion, and by the end of the 50s, people were asking themselves why they even needed a skill like that in the first place. If there's one thing we don't need but still want, that has to be what's coming up after this. Phone calls with switchboard operator. In the era before direct dialing, making a phone call involved interacting with a switchboard operator, typically a woman seated at a large switchboard with rows of jacks and cords. To place a call, you'd pick up the receiver and tell the operator the number you wanted to reach, often with a location identifier like Main Street or Maplewood, 3 to 4,567 inches. The operator would then connect your call by physically inserting a plug into the corresponding jack and cord. They often knew the local community intimately. This personal touch sometimes led to friendly conversations and an occasional bit of gossip exchanged during the call setup. While today's instant connections seem magical, those moments of human interaction take the cake. We may miss that vibe, but the next vibe on the list should be on every blacklist known to man. X-ray shoe fitting machine. The X-ray shoe fitting machine, or the fluoroscope, was a common fixture in American shoe stores between the 30s and the 50s. In ads, the machines were touted as a new way to check the fit of a shoe. This was thought to guarantee that the shoes would be comfortable. Children's shoes were said to last longer because the fit could be more exact. In the early 1950s, professional medical associations began to issue warnings about the dangers of the exposure. Manufacturers became increasingly worried. States began to ban them from use, and shoe store owners started to phase them out of their stores. While the 50s was a fun time to live in, it was certainly dangerous to our health. Coming up next is an even riskier occurrence that we have lost to time. No seatbelts in cars. In the 50s, cars lacked seatbelts, making journeys a non-stop James Bond movie. Without these essential safety restraints, passengers and drivers were at greater risk during accidents, often experiencing severe injuries due to ejection or impact with the vehicle's interior. This absence of seatbelts reflected a different era's priorities regarding automotive safety, where the focus was more on comfort and style rather than crash protection. It wasn't until the 1960s and 1970s that seatbelt usage gained widespread recognition for its life-saving potential, leading to legislative mandates and increased awareness of their critical role in vehicle safety. 1960s. Man on the moon. Anyone old enough to remember this moment still has it burned at the back of their brains. On July 20, 1969, when astronauts Neil Armstrong and Edwin "Buzz" Aldrin became the first humans to land and walk on the lunar surface during NASA's Apollo 11 mission. This monumental achievement marked a significant milestone in human history and space exploration, showing us just how fearsome science, technology, and human determination can be. Armstrong's famous words upon setting foot on the moon, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," resonated globally. Humans had finally conquered the planet. It was a victory for the large and small, the rich and poor, and even our pets to celebrate. Given the scale, it seems the 60s was all about breaking records, because our next entry was an infamous record race that went all the way. Chasing Babe Ruth. The pursuit of Babe Ruth's single-season record of 60 home runs hijacked baseball narrative in 1961. Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle of the New York Yankees captured national attention with their duel to break it. Maris ultimately succeeded, hitting 61 home runs amid intense scrutiny and debate over the length of the season compared to Ruth's era. This was truly a special time in baseball, and the sport has scarcely been able to reclaim its fire since then. Coming up next is a group that knows a thing or two about creating special moments: Beatlemania. Beatlemania was a cultural phenomenon that swept across the globe, marking the rise of the Beatles as legends immortalized in music history. Starting in the early 60s, this Liverpool-based group of young chaps like John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr captured the hearts and imaginations of millions with their infectious melodies, innovative sound, and charismatic personalities. Beatlemania was characterized by frenzied fans, sold-out concerts, and a wave of merchandise from lunchboxes to clothing, idolizing them. The girls loved them, and the boys wanted to be them. They made the 60s a solid place to be, and we always have them to thank for the music. Our next entry was less famous, but almost just as impactful. Penny candies. Taking your crush to the local store for a penny candy was today's equivalent of a dinner date, except you didn't have to break the bank for it. Whenever you wanted to feel like an adult or drown your sorrows away with a sugary snack, you could go there. Funny enough, you could use just a little change to buy all the sweets you had been dreaming about all week. Wouldn't you want to go there with your old pals just one more time? While we can't have them back, our next entry can still be ordered on Amazon if you're motivated enough. Bikes with banana seats. These bicycles featured elongated, padded seats shaped like a banana, which were not only distinctive in appearance, but also, strangely enough, offered a comfortable and stylish ride. Popular among kids and teens during that era, bikes with banana seats were often customized with high-rise handlebars, sissy bars, and sometimes even colorful streamers or playing cards attached to the spokes. Riding these bikes felt like cruising in style, and our next entry felt like drinking in style. Fizzies. Fizzies were effervescent tablets popular in the 1960s and 1970s that transformed ordinary water into flavored soda-like beverages. These tablets came in various flavors like cherry, orange, root beer, and grape, and were packaged in tubes or foil packets. To enjoy a fizzy, you would drop a tablet into a glass of water where it would fizz and dissolve, creating a fizzy and flavored drink. Fizzies were a hit among kids, offering a fun and novel way to enjoy soda-like refreshment without the need for cans. It's sad that their popularity has declined over the years. 1970s. The Case of Patty Hearst. This case was the next best thing to a blockbuster movie that you could get your hands on in the 70s. Everything about it seemed like it had been lifted out of a murder mystery novel. Patty Hearst, heiress to the Hearst publishing empire, was abducted in 1974 by the Symbionese Liberation Army, a radical left-wing group. During her captivity, she underwent a transformation, seemingly aligning with her captor's ideology and participating in criminal activities, including bank robberies. This led to widespread speculation about Stockholm Syndrome and the complexities of her involvement. Hearst's trial and eventual conviction were highly controversial. At some point, it felt like something we had all dreamt about, because how was something like that even real? Enormous sideburns. From disco dancers to rock stars, the 70s saw sideburns evolve into a distinct marker of personal style. These facial hair extensions, often extending well below the earlobe, were embraced by celebrities, musicians, and everyday trendsetters. Men like Burt Reynolds and Elvis Presley made wearing huge mutton chops an iconic look. Sideburns became a symbol of rebellion against traditional grooming norms, signaling a departure from the clean-cut styles of the previous decade. Hitchhiking. People didn't always love cars as much as they do now. In the 70s, hitchhiking became a popular mode of travel, especially among young people seeking adventure and freedom. With their thumbs out and backpacks in tow, hitchhikers were a common sight on highways and backroads. They were proof of the era's spirit of exploration. This form of travel was seen as a way to meet new people, save money, and experience the world spontaneously. However, hitchhiking also carried risks, and stories of dangerous encounters began to emerge, leading to a decline in its popularity by the late 70s. Movies like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre scared the youth stiff, so they had to find other sources of adventure, which our next entry provided. Disco. The disco era, spanning the mid-70s to the early 80s, was a vibrant and transformative period in music and culture, characterized by pulsating rhythms, flashy dance floors, and extravagant fashion. Disco music brought people together in nightclubs and discotheques. Hits by artists like Donna Summer, the Bee Gees, and Gloria Gaynor dominated the charts, providing the soundtrack for an era defined by its infectious energy and escapism. Coming up next is an item that gave our homes that same infectious energy. Floral sofas. These sofas featured large, sprawling flower designs in a variety of hues, from earthy tones to bright psychedelic palettes. The floral sofa not only provided a comfortable seating option, but also served as a statement piece, adding a touch of whimsy and personality to any space. Today, these vintage sofas are cherished by lovers of retro decor. Large floppy collars. Wearing one of these right now might make you look silly, but large floppy collars were all the rage in the 70s. These oversized collars adorned shirts, blouses, and jackets, often paired with wide lapels and vibrant patterns. Men and women alike embraced this trend, making it a key element of both casual and formal wear. The dramatic collars added a touch of flamboyance and were frequently seen in disco outfits, business suits, and everyday apparel. So those are some of the things that made the 70s irreplaceable. Now, it's time to set our sights on the glorious 80s. 1980s. The mullet. In the 80s, the mullet became a central figure, sported by numerous celebrities who helped define its iconic status. Billy Ray Cyrus's mullet became synonymous with his hit Achy Breaky Heart, while David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust era showcased an avant-garde take on the style. British TV presenter Pat Sharp, tennis star Andre Agassi, and actor Mel Gibson, particularly in the Lethal Weapon series, also popularized the look. Additionally, Richard Dean Anderson's portrayal of MacGyver solidified the mullet's place in pop culture. These stars collectively turned the mullet into a pioneer of the 80s madness. It introduced us to a level of crazy that set the tone for years to come. Who is your favorite character with a mullet? While you're typing that out, let's take a look at the most popular animal character from that era. Spuds MacKenzie. Spuds is the original party animal if there was ever one so rich, suave, or as popular with the ladies. Spuds MacKenzie was a fictional bull terrier who became an iconic advertising mascot for Bud Light beer in the late 80s. Introduced in a 1987 Super Bowl commercial, Spuds quickly rose to fame with his playful persona. Sporting sunglasses, Hawaiian shirts, and surrounded by adoring fans, Spuds became a pop culture superstar. He also gave his creators, Bud Light, a well-needed boost in popularity and sales. Despite controversies and criticisms regarding the marketing of alcohol to young audiences, Spuds remained a pleasant collective memory. Our next entry was not as pleasant as Spuds, though. Just Say No. Just Say No was the catchy slogan of Nancy Reagan's 80s anti-drug campaign aimed at kids and teens. The idea was to empower them to resist drugs by simply saying no, because apparently peer pressure was no match for a firm response. The campaign became a cultural fixture, with its message plastered in schools and media everywhere. While its actual effectiveness is questionable, after all, it takes more than a slogan to combat substance addiction, the phrase remains iconic. It's a bit like thinking you can solve global warming with a "Don't Litter" sign. While that was a wacky period, up next is an even wackier trend: Hot Wheels. Hot Wheels, introduced by Mattel in 1968, quickly became a beloved toy for children and collectors alike. These die-cast cars were known for their detailed designs, vibrant colors, and fast-rolling wheels. Hot Wheels changed the toy car market with their cool aesthetics. They also boosted performance on specially designed tracks that featured loops, jumps, and gravity-defying stunts. Over the decades, Hot Wheels expanded to include themed sets, licensed models from popular franchises, and rare collector editions. Over the years, Hot Wheels has evolved, introducing new models, limited editions, and collaborations with popular franchises such as Star Wars, Marvel, and even real automotive brands. Collectors' interest in vintage Hot Wheels models continues to thrive, with some rare cars fetching high prices at auctions and collector markets. As a cultural thing, they have mostly lost their fire. They don't dominate the collective consciousness. Missing kids on milk cartons. This initiative began in 1984, spearheaded by the National Child Safety Council and dairy companies in response to growing concerns over the increasing number of missing children. The idea was simple, yet impactful, placing photographs and brief details of missing children on milk cartons, which were a staple in most American households, hoping that someone might recognize the child and provide crucial information. One of the first and most notable cases was that of 6-year-old Eitan Patz, who disappeared in 1979 while walking to his school bus stop in New York City. His face on milk cartons marked the beginning of this grassroots effort. The campaign gained national attention, but it was eventually phased out for more advanced and widespread technologies, such as Amber Alerts and the Internet. It remains a nice memory, doesn't it? Speaking about a nice memory, payphone. When was the last time you saw a payphone and where? Remember when making phone calls was only 25 cents per call? Those were the days, wouldn't you say? If only we could reverse that situation and have it like that now. Although you may still see payphones occasionally, they have been mostly replaced with cell phones. Payphones were a regular part of urban and rural landscapes from the mid-20th century through the early 2000s. These coin-operated public telephones provided a crucial means of communication for people on the go, before the advent of widespread mobile phone usage. Found on street corners, in malls, and in other public places, payphones allowed individuals to make local and long-distance calls by inserting coins or using prepaid calling cards. They played an essential role in emergencies, travel, and everyday communication, particularly for those without access to a personal phone. However, as mobile phones became more affordable and widespread in the late 1990s and early 2000s, the demand for payphones dwindled. No one could have really predicted the effects of all this new technology in our lives. It has certainly changed a lot, hasn't it? Trapper Keepers. Trapper Keepers were the ultimate school accessory of the 80s and even a bit of the 90s, transforming organization into a fun and colorful experience. With their secure Velcro or snap closures, multiple pockets and slots for all your important papers, they were as practical as they were stylish. Each Trapper Keeper boasted eye-catching designs, from neon patterns to awesome graphics, making them a hit among students who wanted to add a touch of personality to their school gear. However, as digital technology advanced and more students switched to electronic organizers, the Trapper Keeper's popularity waned. However, there was one futuristic instrument that had a much longer shelf life: Nintendo's Power Glove. No other gaming console has come quite close to Nintendo's Power Glove. Released in the late 1980s, was a pioneering yet short-lived attempt to bring motion control to video gaming. Launched in 1989, the Power Glove promised an innovative way to interact with games through hand gestures and movements. Despite its futuristic appeal and extensive marketing, the glove failed to deliver on its promises due to its difficult controls and lack of precise responsiveness. Gamers found it challenging to use effectively, leading to frustration rather than enjoyment. Between the complaints and the negative PR, the Power Glove quickly faded from the market, but it will always be remembered. Our next entry was not a techie investment, but it was just as important to the home: potpourri. This fragrant mixture of dried flowers, herbs, and spices had been used for centuries before it broke into the 80s. Typically, potpourri adds a pleasant scent to homes. The reason it saw a resurgence in popularity during the 80s was because people embraced more natural and rustic home decor. Typically displayed in decorative bowls or sachets, potpourri not only provided a lovely aroma, but also added a touch of color and charm to living spaces. Making potpourri often involved drying flowers and herbs, then mixing them with essential oils and fixatives like orris root to preserve and enhance the scent. While potpourri was a nice-smelling experience, up next was an aggressive but enjoyable one: Schwarzenegger movies. Arnold Schwarzenegger became a cinematic icon in the 80s, starring in a series of blockbuster movies that cemented his status as one of Hollywood's biggest action stars. His breakthrough role came in 1982 with Conan the Barbarian, where his impressive physique and stoic performance brought the sword and sorcery hero to life. This success was followed by the 1984 release of The Terminator, directed by James Cameron. In this film, Schwarzenegger's portrayal of the relentless cyborg assassin became legendary, and the line "I'll be back" became more popular than the man himself. He was basically a symbol of the 80s. Now that we are done with that period in history, let's take a look at the great 90s. 1990s, VHS tapes. In the 1990s, VHS tapes were a cornerstone of home entertainment, offering a convenient way to watch and record movies and TV shows. Families flocked to video rental stores, and the bulky tapes were a common sight in living rooms. However, as the decade ended, The rise of DVDs, which provided superior picture quality, durability, and ease of use, began to phase out VHS tapes. The transition to DVDs, combined with the emergence of digital streaming, rapidly diminished the once popular VHS format. By the early 2000s, VHS tapes had largely become a nostalgic relic, representing a bygone era of home entertainment that has since been replaced by more advanced and convenient technologies. Floppy disks. When was the last time you saw one of these cute little lifesavers? Floppy disks were a key technology for data storage and transfer from the late 1970s through the early 1990s. These thin, square disks, encased in a flexible plastic shell, could store and transport data between computers. They came in various sizes, with the most common being the 3.5-inch disk, which could hold up to 1.44 megabytes of data, an impressive amount at the time. The floppy disk made personal computing more accessible, allowing users to save and share files easily. However, as technology advanced, the floppy disk was gradually replaced by more reliable and higher-capacity storage solutions, such as CDs, DVDs, and USB flash drives. Technology wasn't the only thing that dominated the 90s. Believe it or not, baby fashion was a huge part of that period, the Beanie Baby craze. Of the numerous toy crazes in the 90s, only a prophet would have thought Beanie Babies would gain Michael Jackson-level fame. The trend turned small, stuffed animals into major collectibles. Produced by Tie Inc., Beanie Babies were filled with plastic pellets and came in a variety of animals and designs. Each had a unique name and a swing tag with a poem, adding to their charm. The craze was driven by limited editions, retirements, and the thrill of the hunt, with collectors eagerly seeking rare or discontinued designs. Pagers. Back in those days, it made you feel important to have a pager at your waist. Whenever it pinged, people around you could tell that you were a super popular person who has a lot of friends. Jokes aside, users received numeric or alphanumeric messages, usually indicating a phone number to call back or a brief text. Pagers were widely used by professionals, such as doctors and emergency services, who needed reliable communication on the go. Though largely replaced by cell phones and text messaging, pagers remain a nostalgic part of pre-cell phone connectivity and communication. Speaking about pre-cell phone connectivity, our next entry is a good example. Paper maps. If you remember a time before voice-assisted maps, this would have struck an important chord. Paper maps, which had been the primary tool for navigation for centuries, were still widely used by the start of the 90s. They could be found in every car glove box, travel guide, and household drawer, providing detailed road, city, and regional layouts for travelers, hikers, and anyone needing to find their way. However, as the 1990s progressed, technology began to revolutionize navigation. The development and proliferation of global positioning system technology played the main role in this transition. Early GPS devices became available to consumers, allowing for real-time location tracking and turn-by-turn directions, which was a significant advantage over static paper maps. Which of these decades do you feel you belong in most? Is there anything about those times that we forgot to mention? Let us know in the comments.